Right guys, welcome back to another video, and today let's talk about some football. So basically what I wanted to talk about today was my ranking of managers, which I actually tried to record this video about 3 days ago. Now I usually upload on weekdays and I couldn't do that because I didn't record the video because it just didn't record. And then I couldn't be bothered, to be honest. It really annoyed me. So I just moved on, left it because it was already quite late at the time. But now I'm back and let's just get into the top 20. Now I'm going to be starting from 20, going all the way to 1, just so it's a bit more, I don't know, mystery, I guess. But the first two, obviously Bournemouth, I don't think they have a manager right now. If they do, it's a caretaker one or whatever, and I'm not too bothered. They're the worst team in the whole league. They're never going to do anything. No matter who they're getting in management, they're not staying in the league. So 20th for me. Brighton I've put in 19th because even though they don't have a manager, they've actually been performing a lot better this season than I have thought they would have. Obviously, they're like 4th right now or something, with like the best defensive record in the whole league or something ridiculous. Fair play to Brighton, and even though you don't have a manager, it was Graham Potter and he's taken all of his staff, so I think you're a bit in the mud. Moving on to 18th, I've gone for Frank Lampard. I just don't rate Frank Lampard as a manager whatsoever. I think he's overhyped, mainly because of what he did in his playing career. Like, obviously he's one of the best players to ever play in the Premier League, and I love Frank Lampard as a player, but he's just not good as a manager. Like, he hasn't done anything successful. He had loads of money at Derby, didn't make it into the Premier League with them. He had all the money he could ever ask for at Chelsea. I don't care that he had a transfer ban the first year. He had all the best. He had the best academy in the whole league, and he's still, like, I think he got Champions League 4th or something. Like, he didn't do very good. Didn't win any trophies there. Got sacked. Went to Everton. Bottled it essentially by just, well, he didn't. The only reason why Frank Lampard stayed in the league last season was because of every other manager just being worse than him. Like, every other, like, general team, like Watford, like Burnley, like Norwich. Norwich had no chance before they even came into the league. They were Bournemouth from last season. Like Watford were just plain bad, who changed their manager every 5 minutes. And Burnley just bottled it at the end by sacking Sean Dyche, and that's why they got relegated. So you stayed up on the preface that there was just worse teams better than you, not even that you were playing better or a better manager. You have Richarlison that went for like £60 million. You had, obviously, Calvert-Lewin was injured, but you still had, like, the England goalkeeper, and you only just managed to stay up. You have one of the most expensive squads if you go on how much you paid for them, and you're still just bad. And you brought in so many recruits this season, and I don't know if you've won a game. Like, have you won a game this season yet? I don't know, you might have, but I just don't rate you, Frank. Same thing with Steven Gerrard. However, Steven Gerrard has actually won something. He's won the Scottish League, which in my opinion doesn't mean that much. I'm sorry to any Scottish fans, but it's just not Premier League level. If you put those Scottish teams into the Premier League, they're not finishing top half, are they, realistically? And you saw after he left Rangers, they made it to a Europa League final, like, without him. Obviously, they didn't win the title because Celtic got a lot better and actually got a manager that was competent in. But, like, they actually played a lot better in the Europa League, got to a Europa League final, like, was playing a lot better football, in my personal opinion, than what they were playing under him. And as soon as he's gone to Aston Villa, he got that media buzz, and no one's been criticising him for his poor performances, which there have been many poor performances in my opinion. He hasn't performed well under any sort of pressure. He's made all these signings. Obviously, I feel bad for him that Diego Carlos got injured, but at the end of the day, you have a squad that should be, like, mid-table at least, and the fact that you're near the bottom of the table is not a good sign for you. You had a really bad end to last season, and I admit it could have been injuries and stuff like that, but you do have a good squad. We've seen Aston Villa when they can play well together. You've got a really deep squad as well for an Aston Villa team, in my personal opinion. Like, it's really, like, they've got a lot of talent in that team, and they're just bad because they're just not playing well. And that has to be put down to the manager, who I think Frank Lampard and Steven Gerrard, in my opinion, a bit like they get the pass because of who they were as players, and that's why the media loves them. They give them all of this credit and stuff like that, when realistically they've done nothing to show that they deserve these jobs. For example, let's just talk about Graham Potter. Graham Potter worked in, like, some league in the middle of nowhere. I don't know if it was the Swedish league or whatever it was, but he worked there for so many years. Worked up to being a championship manager at Swansea. Then got a job at Brighton. Took them to being the most successful Brighton has ever been in the Premier League. And somehow, like, people think that Steven Gerrard is better than managers like him. I don't see it. Like, you have to prove yourself in some way. And I feel like nowadays a lot of managers get their come up because of the players they were. We've seen this with Wayne Rooney. You see this with Steven Gerrard. You see this with Frank Lampard. You saw this even with Gary Neville when he got top jobs when he probably shouldn't. Like, I respect, like, people like John Terry actually going out and being assistant managers and stuff like that and learning how to do it genuinely. Even Arteta, who learnt under Pep, he didn't go straight into it. I just respect it more. Sorry, I've ranted about those two for so long. Next, I've gone for Steve Cooper. Obviously, Nottingham Forest manager, I think it's just because of the task he's going to have. I just don't think he's going to do a very good job with this Nottingham Forest team. I think that he's overperformed by even getting him into the Premier League, so let me just say that first. However, the fact that he is going to have to make like these 21 new signings that they've brought in gel is absolutely ridiculous that is his job, which I just don't think he's going to succeed at, in my personal opinion. Now, he genuinely could succeed at it, but I just don't believe he will. And that is why I've put him 16th, just below Marco Silva, who obviously destroyed the Championship last season, and brought Fulham into the Premier League and are doing an amazing job. He is doing an outstanding job, and I underrated this man so much in the way they're playing football. He destroyed the Championship easily, like absolutely dominated it like Norwich do. I thought they were going to come up and just be like a Norwich, just sit at the bottom of the table, but they're actually playing and actually winning games. So that's why I've had to put him 15th. He genuinely could have gone higher. Like, genuinely, I thought he is a really good manager, and like, I love like how he is pushing this team to actually stay in the league this season. Moving on to 14th, I've gone for Jesse Marsch. I'm not going to lie, I'm not a massive fan of the way he plays football, but he is doing well with the Leeds team that a lot of people said would be in trouble after losing their two best players. He's coped actually extremely well with it so far, and with all of the stuff, he's kept them in the league. They're progressing well this season, and a lot of the players he's brought in that he knows are actually playing really well, so fair play to him, and I had to give him some respect there. Next, I've gone for Bruno Lage. Now, a lot of people will say Bruno Lage is really good. He had an amazing start to the start of last season, then kind of tailed off and were really bad towards the end of last season. And that's the main reason. It's just like, he needs to find form. He wanted to change formation from a back five to a back four. It hasn't really worked that well yet. Obviously, that's why they got rid of Conor Cody and stuff like that, to play this system that he wants to play. But is he going to be able to do it? I think he's a good enough manager to, and we've seen how good a manager he could be in the start of last season. And if they can get back to that form, in my opinion, they're kind of in the middle. They're kind of doing quite good now, so they're doing all right. But if they can get back to that position, I'd be really impressed, and he is a good manager. Moving on to 12th, which is Ralph Hasenhüttl. Now, I can't put you top 10 when you lose 2 games, 9-0 within 2 seasons. I can't put you top 10 when you're that sort of manager. But I love the way his football is aspirational, and it actually like is kind of like going forward a bit fun and not boring, and it's expansive and it's like good to watch. It's not like a team, even though they're bad a lot of times, at least they're fun to watch for Southampton fans, and I do respect that at least. And the fact that he has kept them in this league when a lot of people predict them to go down relegation every single year is a testament to how good a manager he actually is compared to what people rate him as. But being as you've lost 2 games in 2 seasons, 9-0, I can't put you any higher than that. Moving on to 11th, I've put Brendan Rodgers. Now, this is because I'm angry at Brendan Rodgers. He's probably a top 8 manager in this whole league, to be honest. But I can't put you any higher than, well, 11th, because of how bad you've done a job for Leicester City in the past season and the end part of last season. I just think you come with a short life when you're Brendan Rodgers. You don't perform for that long. You might do good for a while, but then after that, it doesn't end particularly well. Moving on to 10th, Vieira. I really like what he's done. He's obviously changed the way Crystal Palace are run from the bottom down, well, from the top down. Essentially because you've got rid of the boring style of Roy Hodgson football and actually started playing football, which is entertaining to watch with all of these young guys coming in and playing football the way they should, and everyone wants to see them play football. People actually enjoy watching Crystal Palace now because of Patrick Vieira, and even though they're not getting the results, they've had a really hard start to this season and still are doing quite good. So fair play to him. You've had a really hard start and you've got points from Liverpool and teams like this, and done quite well against the Manchester City team, even though you lost it. So fair play, I do respect it. Moving on to 9th, I put Eddie Howe. I do like Eddie Howe. He's obviously, I didn't really like him when he was at Bournemouth because he obviously didn't have the resources, and he's playing in a completely different way at Newcastle. And at Newcastle, he's performing at expectations where a lot of people said he wouldn't be able to take them to that level, and he is taking them to that level. He's playing it in an expansive way, playing extremely well against these top sides, getting points from Manchester City, for example, which is, no one would have thought that Newcastle would be the team to take points away. Obviously, he's had huge amounts of investment, but not as much as people think. And I think that the job he's done is actually very good and very, like, it's underrated what he's done at Newcastle and what he will potentially do getting them into European, like, contention, in my opinion. Moving on to 8th, Thomas Frank. I rate him so much. Not many people can name the Brentford starting lineup or who will play most weeks, and he still wins games and he still stays in the Premier League. And what he did last season and what he continues to do this season after losing an important person like Eriksen, bringing a lot of unknown guys into the fold, playing extremely well with players that you've never heard of. He'll just bring them in and they'll play and they'll fit the system perfectly. And you've got to give him credit. It's like what Leicester used to do, bringing in unknown guys, like when we used to bring in like Mahrez and N'Golo Kante, players like this, and they used to just be so successful. And Brentford, like, the team is more important than the individual, and that is what a good manager does. That is why he is one of the best managers in the league, in my opinion. Moving on to 7th, I've got David Moyes. David Moyes is obviously a really good manager, but at the end of the day, he's not won anything, so I can't put him like ahead of like managers that. Yeah, it's like he's had a lot of investment. Not as much as other teams, obviously. It's not like Newcastle levels or something like that. But he has had a decent amount of investment and not really done that well. He didn't perform that well in the Europa League. Like, we'll see how well he does this season. But the way he brought a West Ham team from bottom of the table, essentially, like relegation fighting, to being a solidified European every single like season team is absolutely mad that no one talks about it. And he is one of the best Premier League managers because of what he's done with the resources he's had. Moving on to 6th. Now, the top 6 are obviously the big 6. So I've gone for Graham Potter, mainly because I've never seen you handle egos, Graham. So I don't know what you're going to be like at Chelsea. Obviously, you are a good manager, and we've seen the style of play. I actually watched a Champions League game last night where you played quite well and there was a decent amount of intensity. Obviously, it's going to take a while to implement those sort of tactics into a Chelsea team that's been very defensively minded for a long period of time, like 2-3 years. It's been like that. It's not been fun football, to be fair, for Chelsea. Hopefully now he's a fun manager who sets the team up in a specific way that Chelsea are going to have to learn. But I think once they get that down, they might do well. He's just never won anything for me. And that's why he's below 5th place Arteta, who has actually won an FA Cup. And even though he has had a lot of criticism, I think now he's starting to show what he has built with this team and built with this young core that is really going to be successful. They might not win anything, but they're fun to watch. People actually don't hate Arsenal anymore. I don't mind watching Arsenal now. They're actually a fun team to watch and quite a likeable team nowadays, rather than when you're playing like Aubameyang, like Lacazette, and Pepe, and like all of those players like David Luiz, Willian. You were so horrible, and now I actually enjoy watching Arsenal. So I've gone for 5th place for Arsenal. Well, Arteta. Moving on to 4th, I've gone for Erik ten Hag. Just because of the success that he's had in the Champions League. Like with this Ajax team, obviously, you've had players like Frankie de Jong, you've had players like De Ligt, some amazing players. But you've had a lot of great players, and he's had a lot of great players in that system, but what he is known for is developing young talent, and you've even seen this with bringing in players that are so unknown and playing at an actual good level, like Malaskia now, who is actually performing really well. Like, he is performing really well, and he's going to bring a lot out of these young guys, like Rashford, Sancho, Elanga, Garner, like all of these players. He'll bring a lot out of them, and he will be successful, in my opinion. And just because of what he's done in Europe compared to Arteta, he's gone far in Europe. He's won the Eredivisie, which I know people say isn't that impressive with an Ajax team, but he has done it. So that's why I put him in 4th, and I just think he could actually improve past the team that I am going to name next, which is Antonio Conte. Obviously, Conte is one of the best managers to ever manage in the game. What he's won, his failures in Europe really set him back, in my opinion, from being like top 2. But from what he's won at league level with like teams around the world, extremely impressive. And if he could win a trophy with Tottenham, that could really solidify him as like a legend of like the Premier League, pretty much, in my opinion. Now, I'm not going to speak about the top two that much. In my opinion, Klopp has got to go second. He used to be first for me, but after what Pep has done and just domination and how well Man City have run, you got to say Pep. Pep is an unbelievable manager, and the way he can just change styles of play, obviously he's got the players to do it, so there you go. But the way Pep has just made it so almost every single season Man City are top of the league is incredible. And Klopp has done amazingly well with what he's had, but I do not like the fact of Liverpool spend money. Like, they spend a lot of money. Obviously, they need to keep up, but they do spend a lot more money than people give them credit for. They spend a lot of money. Man City obviously spend a lot and don't sell anyone, really. But, well, except this season they have, to be fair. But Man City, in my opinion, they don't play the most exciting football by any means. I'd rather watch a Liverpool game every single day. But the pure domination, in my opinion, by a Manchester City team, which are pretty much unstoppable, he needs the credit for that. But that is the end of the video, guys. If you have enjoyed this video, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you next time.